And now, Sandro, it's your turn.
Yeah.
I didn't understand nothing on the last part, but you can record the session.
Yeah, that was it in German.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you can see my screen, correct?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
First of all, thanks for accepting my session. It's a pleasure to be here. My session will be about power automation, best practice tips and tricks, usual stuff that we can do in a daily basis on our automation flows. And my name is Sandro Pereira, of course. I'm head of integration at Debscope, a consultant company based on Porto, Portugal. I'm a Microsoft Azure MVP for the last 10 years. I was a Beanstalk MVP, an integration MVP, and now I'm an Azure MVP. But my areas of my focus area is about enterprise integration, Beanstalk, Logic App, Azure, and one of my passions is Power Platform, special Power Automate, aka Flow, because it's kind of the same of Logic Apps. So you have my contacts there, you have my blog. Feel free to reach me out if you have any questions. Just a warning, we are in a full lockdown. This is a house full of kids. I don't know if they will enter in the room or not. I hope not, but if they enter, bear with me and forgive in advance. So what I love about Power Platform is the way we can produce and develop fast applications or tools, no? And you have this power integration with all of these four components that compose the Power Platform, but other additional ones like Azure, Office 365, Dynamics, SharePoint, and so on and so forth. And a small example is, for example, we did a COVID tracking system for a hospital here in Porto using Power Apps, Power Automate, and basically the Power Platform, and we did it in 2 days. This is the amazing stuff that we can do and produce using these low-code, no-code tools. But what is the other part? So fast developer also means that we tend to do mistakes or doesn't or do the developer not in a proper way that we are supposed as a developer to do. No? So this session is about reflecting on what we have now, how we can do it better and do it better in the future. So it's an analysis of our flows and try to understand if they are reliable or not. So the first tip that I have to tell you is Power Automate was rebranded. No, it was named Microsoft Flow, now is Power Automate. Even the logos changed. And why this is important? Because we have kind of like 5 years of documentation that are binding to Microsoft Flow and not Power Automate. And still, most of the stuff are still valid in the current days. So if you are looking for documentation about Power Automate, look about Microsoft Flow and Power Automate. Use these two names because you will find a lot of documentation binding to the old name. And now the real best practice. And I had to start with naming conventions. No, I think naming conventions is important for everything as a developer do, or all the tools, language, and so on and so forth. By using good names, and in this case, it's about the flow name, not the shapes that inside the flow, but the flow name. doing a good name on the flow, it improves readability. You look to the name and you understand what that flow may do or not. It transfers knowledge between teams. So if additional element or other element that didn't participate initially in the process of the flow wants or needs to go and change, it's a way for them to understand and be focused on which are the flows that they need to change. Okay. And the name, you can use all the characters possible to the name, as there is no limitation. So as an example, and this is my not best practice demo samples that I have, I have some examples. If I do an analysis, I may say that the first four are kind of incorrect. The last three may be better, we can improve. And the only one that is kind of, I know by reading, is in the middle, that is a Power BI meetup feedback flow. I know that this is for feedback that we have on the meetups. So it's kind of important you build your naming convention and you apply that naming convention. I'm not telling this is the best naming convention that we will find. It's a naming convention that it adapts to you. Okay. So if I want to change, I can say DBS, it means DevScope, my company. This is for administration, and the first flow is for inventory. Change the water bottle that we have in the fourth floor. And you see that we have in the third floor also. So by using this kind of naming convention, I can easily read and understand that these flows are for these tasks. Okay. And some of them will be proof of concepts. And for example, the last one, again, is for DevScope time reports application to create a time report, submit budget or project. So by applying a good naming convention, you actually can understand without entering in the flows what will be the scope of that flow. Okay. Now, continuing in the naming convention, this is the second tip, or the third tip, is creating a good naming convention on the shapes also of the flow. It's not only the name of the flow, all the actions that you see on the flow should have a good naming convention and not if, else, and that's it. So again, it's the same reasons. It improves readability. It transfers knowledge between the team. And you also avoid the pain process of you go back to the flow 4 months after and try to understand what you did 4 months earlier. No? The only limitation here on the naming of the actions, you cannot use some special characters that are described on the screen. The rest, you can rename it whatever you want. So again, if I take this example, this is what you shouldn't supposed to do. Again, if you are like a C# developer, you don't create bar 1, bar 2, function 1, function 2. You give a proper name to the variables, you give a proper name to the functions. Otherwise, you probably fire after a few weeks. So it's the same applies for everything. So in this case, initial var, condition, set variable, send message, for each, it doesn't really have a good naming convention. You don't really know what is there. You know that you are initialize a variable, but what kind of variables? Imagine that you have 5 or 6 variables. You have to enter on the shape, each shape, to understand what we're trying to initialize there, or what is the condition you have there. Or what is this for each you have in the screen. So it doesn't improve performance and readability. So if you have to do an analysis, you may have a lot of things to change, no? So as an example, you should give a name of these actions that describes what you are trying to achieve there. For example, the initial variable, if you put the name of the variable there, just you have a good understanding. Then you say that, okay, I have two variables. I'm initializing the first one, the HTML email body, and the second will be the set description. So in the condition, you can actually say what you are trying to do there. Check if I'm receiving an array of objects in the kind of a structure. So you know that I'm doing a validation if on JSON I'm receiving an array or a simple object there. And of course, for each of where I'm going to do the for each, and in this case, for each general notification, and the functions, you can say convert a step code to a description and so on and so forth. So by doing this or better than this, you can actually read and understand the flow without the need to enter on each action you have there. So if you see also on the screen, that is the trigger of this flow, this sample. It's not, despite you know that I'm receiving a request, is not the best, but unfortunately we can change that. We cannot change that. It's a limitation of some triggers. They don't allow you to change the name, and the HTTP receiver request is one of them. We cannot change. Also, the if true, if false condition, you cannot change neither these. So it's a small limitation that you have. You will see in the next tips how we can bypass this limitation and improve readability also there. But the rest you can always change, and you can even change the name if you already have the flow build and there are some dependencies. There is no problem. You can always change that without need to redesign or fix the flow, because it will automatically adapt that name and change what is already there. So, and by to rename is quite easy. So you have this part JSON, just click on three dots, rename it, and you can rename it. The only problem that I found out is that, for example, in this case, you see that I have in below Power BI connection. It is broke because you see an exclamation there. So basically, the credentials expired or something like that, and I have to fix that. So we cannot rename or we shouldn't rename the actions without fixing all the connectors there. Because what happens if you change, for example, the part JSON to part JSON A, and then you fix the Power BI connection, you will see that the Power BI connection will get the old reference to parse JSON and not the correct one. So by fixing first the connection and then rename it, it will automatically fix these parts JSON and will rename it to parts JSON A. It will automatically update all the reference, but not if it's broke. Okay, so be aware. First, fix your flow and then rename your actions. Doing the same concept about naming conventions, but this case is comments. So again, if you are a C# developer or any kind of developer, you put comments on your code, no, on your functions, why this function is used, or some blocks, why this block is doing, or something like that, to help you guys in the future to understand your code. The same will happen in flows, okay? So why we should put comments? It improves readability, it transfers knowledge again, and save you and your teammates for future frustration of understanding what you did and why you did that. So I'm saying here that every expression should have a comment, but it's kind of the maximum drastic that we have. We don't need all the expressions, but the most important expression should have a comment. For example, I told that the trigger, HTTP trigger, doesn't allow you to rename the trigger, but it allows you to put a comment. So we are stick with when a HTTP request is received, okay, but then I put a comment saying this is to receive a JSON from an evaluation form, OCR metadata from Smart Augmented. That is a tool that we have in DevScope for doing OCR of physical documents and digitalize them and then send it to the flow to process them and integrate in other systems. So I know that now that this flow is receiving a JSON from a Smart Augmented system. This way I understand what it's doing. On the variables, you can also put why you are using this variable. So why I'm creating HTML email body if I can apply directly on the send message action. So I'm doing that to proper render a HTML body because the action doesn't allow you to properly send a custom HTML directly on the body. So for that reason, I'm using HTML body, and that's what the description I put there. So I know that for this reason, I'm using this variable. And another good idea for you is to put, for example, on the conditions, and you see this small pink shape saying string, and this is basically the expression we are using to validate on the condition. But we have this limitation that despite of the size of the field of the text box, it always stays this small window saying string 3 dots. For us to understand what is going on there, you have to click there, open then and the expression windows pop up, and then we still have a small text editor that you need to scroll to proper read or copy and paste in Notepad to proper read the expression. To avoid you every time to enter that and understand what you're doing, you can take the expression and put it in the comment. Now I know that, okay, I'm checking if I'm receiving an array of objects or a single object. And to do that, I'm going to basically string the triggered body of the general notification and see if I starts for a bracket. So now I don't need to always go to that expression windows, and it's again readable. Okay, and for example, in scopes, we can on the beginning of the scope saying, okay, this scope will perform these actions. In this case, all of these 4 actions is to retrieve parameters from Key Vault or database that I will use in the next actions of the flow. So I know this is to get parameters. Another tip is copy to clipboard. This is a good feature of the flow of the Power Automate that I really love to have in Logic apps, but I don't have it. So we can by using the clipboard, we can easily duplicate actions or scopes and basically copy and paste to the other shapes or to the other branch or to below actions and so on and so forth. This is the way we can perform copy and paste. How we can do that? We select the action or we select the scope, 3 dots, and we have the option copy to my clipboard. Then when we add an action, there is a tab called My Clipboard. and you can see all the copies that you did to your clipboard. Important thing for you to know is that clipboard, once you copy to clipboard, this is cross flows. So you can leave the flow, enter in another flow, and copy that action to a different flow. Or you can copy on the flow, the current flow. So I told the kids can enter the room, and it is. Sorry about that. Vai ter que mamar, vai. So how do you clean your clipboard is doing F5 or close the window, and then your clipboard goes away. Otherwise, it stays on your session cache browser, and you can copy and paste again across flows. But what is the scope? And the importance of the scope. Basically, again, if you are a C# developer, I use a lot of C# because it's the language that I use the most as a programmer. So if you are a C# developer, you can create regions that allows you to collapse the code for you to properly read your code. This is the same scope in the same functionality that has the scope on the Power Automate flow. So one of the concepts of the scope is a region, is to collapse shapes and for you to better read your flows. Because it can get large and bigger, large and bigger, and sometimes it's difficult to read. So you can create some scopes to collapse some certain areas and you to work properly and read properly your flow. The other, and again, if you are a C# developer, you can do try catch or try catch finally to avoid or control exceptions. No? This is the same. This is another functionality of the scope. So how we can build a try-catch finally on a flow is using 2 or 3 scopes in sequence. Okay, so the first one will be the try. Then we need to configure the second to be the catch, and if we want, we can create the third one to be the finally. And I will explain here on the error handling how we can actually do that. No? So error handling and configure run after settings. There are a lot of settings that you can do on your flow to create error handling and to proper control failures of your flow. No? The first one, and the traditional one, is using the try catch that I spoke earlier. So the first one will be a normal scope. You put all your actions inside that you want to control if there is an exception there. And you then add an additional scope below. It has to be below that one. And you put all the actions that you can do to catch and what you do with the error. So in this case, I'm logging the error. And to configure that to be a catch, you have to go, again, 3 dots, run after settings, and configure this scope to be executed if the previous one has failed or has timeouted. So if it fails or get a timeout there, then I need to control the exception. And then again, below, exactly below the catch, we do another scope. We call it finally scope. You should create a better name than finally scope. So you should create, going back to the naming convention, I need to change these slides to be in a proper way. You should put try something and then catch something and finally something. Okay. Don't do these kind of names. do it proper way. So again, finally below, and then we need to again go to run after settings and do if the catch is successful, as failed, skipped, or as timeout. We don't care. All the options. It has to be executed because this is the concept of the finally. So if the try is executed successful, it will run the finally. If the try catch and run the catch, if the try fails and runs the catch, then the final needs to be executed either the way. Okay. This is how we do the try catch in flows. But we don't need to do try catch for all the scenarios. Okay. So as any language like C#, if one line fails, then it stops the code there. This is the exact behavior of the flow. So each shape is configured to the previous one, be executed if the previous one is successful. Okay, but in all of the shapes, you have the possibility to control these and do like a try catch of each line of code without doing without using scopes. For example, let's suppose that this shape is about logging. I don't care if the log fails or not. If it's an important flow, if the log fails, I need to run neither you need to continue the flow. I don't want my flow to break if a logging system is offline or is doing some errors. Probably then I need to be notified that something failed, but this is a different story. I don't want my code to break for non-critical stuff. So I can say if the log fails, runs this action neither the same, okay? And we can do that even if there is a try scope involved. We can do like this is like a try inside the try catch, and inside the try catch. So we can actually say that, okay, I don't care if the SQL is down, execute the parser either the way. In this case, it doesn't make sense. It's just for you to understand that all these action has the ability to you configure like a try catch without using a scope. The try, using the scope is to control multiple actions and do a try of these multiple actions. Okay. But there is another important feature that is the retry. So all these actions connects to a system. No, in this case, this is a Dropbox. Create a file in Dropbox. You have to access Dropbox, and it may fail. The system may be down or something like that. So all these actions are also settings that you can control about retry policies. There is the default one that you can see there, but you can actually change that and say, okay, in this case, I want to try 6 times before it fails. So in this action, create a file, I will try to send the file 6 times before it fails on a fixed interval of 20 seconds. And the format is a little strange, PT20X, but this is, you have the examples there. This is ISO 8601 format. PT20X means 20 seconds, 15M minutes, and then hours, days, and then you can do a mix of stuff. So it's quite powerful. You can control these fixed intervals. But that means that if I try to create a file on the Dropbox, the first time fails, it will wait 20 seconds and try the second, third, fourth, five, and the sixth. And if it doesn't be able to send the file on these 6 times, it will break and give an error. Okay, so you have try catch as a scope. You have a try catch on it, kind of try catch run actions of each shapes And you have retry policies to control all of these error handling and retry policies and persistence, okay? So it's quite powerful mechanism that the Power Automate has out of the box control of this stuff. And then one of the most important stuff is that you need to learn from failures, okay? You have to go to your history of the executions and learn why the system are failing or why the flow is breaking some part of the flow. I'm working again the last 15 years in enterprise integration. If an orchestration or a flow or workflow, whatever you name it, fails, it is critical. Okay, for me, a process cannot fail. It has to be successful executed. If it fails, I need to analyze why and see how I can avoid this to fail. And if it fails for an expected behavior, then we need to redesign that for not to fail. Because if you already expect this behavior to happen, you can control it. And you can manage that to be properly successful executed, but not failing. Failing is critical, okay? Fail means that you have a problem that needs to be addressed. Again, as a C# developer, we do defensive code, okay? For example, use the expression using or the command using to connect to the SQL. You try and you read the data, but first you validate if there is a data to read, and if it's data to read, then we read. Okay, we don't assume that the data is there. We do this defensive code. No. The same happens in the Power Automate flows. So this is quite a real sample, and I was passing by the office before the COVID situation, and I realized that one of my coworkers were working on the Power Automate, and for curiosity, I sit next to him, just explaining what you are doing, show me. I'm interested to see what you are doing. And I saw the history that there was failing. And I asked the guy, why this is failing? And he told me, oh, there is no data on the SQL, so we get this failure, but this is normal. I told him, this cannot be normal. If you are already expect that the data is not there, you need to control it in a proper way in your flow. So basically, it was getting some details, and how do you do the queries? You may get this result set empty or result set inside a table that is empty. Neither the way, it's empty. But you don't assume that the data is there and use the tokens on the next action to get the ID, the name, or other stuff, because it will break. No, and it was resigned to control the situation, to check if exists the data or not, and then if exists, do something, otherwise terminate the flow. This is the proper way you can do that, because this is an expected behavior, is not a failure, okay? And you cannot assume the data is there. You have to control sometimes if there is data to be used on the next actions. So again, failing is critical. You need to understand from the history of the executions what is happening and learn from that, okay? And I'm getting to the expressions and the nightmare of using expressions. This is, as a Power Automate aficionado, this is for me the worst experience is using expressions in the Power Automate flow. There are a lot of built-in actions that you can perform, like concatenate strings, math operations, parsings, and so on and so forth. It's out of the box. You don't need to use functions or additional code to do that. It's native on the engine. So the first thing you need to know is what this strange red name that I got here. So again, body. I understand what is body. Is the body of the actions I have, the message, the JSONs that I have inside the message. But what these use expressions with underscore, and basically all the names that you put on the actions, all the space will be replaced by underscore, and this is the name of your actions inside your workflow. So execute store procedure get BZT lock error details is my action, but on the code it will be replaced by underscores all the spaces. And again, we have this small expression saying body 3 dots, and then it opens a pop-up window with a small text box that doesn't fit none of the expression that we have, and we basically scroll that or basically copy that. What I'm doing normally, it's copy that expression to Notepad++, Notepad, whatever, and read that information in a proper way. Or again, I can copy that and put it on the comments of the action. Neither the way you have these huge expressions that you can use. Again, you have a lot of functions that you can use out of the box. Some of them are a little annoying. I give you an example, for example, this one, and how I normally use to build my expressions. And I normally do in this kind of format in the Notepad++. In this case, I'm summing 4 integers and divide by 4 to do an average. The add action only accepts 2 fields. So I need to use a combination of add expressions to sum 2 and then sum another 2 and then divide the group of these sums and then divide by 4, convert to integer. In this case, I want the integer, not the decimal part. And after I have these built in, and because there is no quite a proper IntelliSense on that expression, I prefer to do this way. I know that brackets and commas are properly done, and then I just put it in a single line, remove the enters and the tabs, put in a single line, and copy to the small expression shape there, and do an update. So I hope in the future the product group improves this functionality, at least allow us to have a proper window to do the expressions and have some kind of proper intelligence there. But until then, it's kind of a nightmare to build this expression in a proper way. Flow checker, and why this is a good feature also. It basically is a feature that exists in Power Automate that will do a checkup on your flow and highlight the errors, the existing errors of your flow. It will save a lot of times and focus where the error exists. I give you an example. So if it's a small flow, you are in a safe situation. But if you get big flows and you start to have scopes that are properly collapsed, you see in this picture that I have a red dot on the flow checker. That means that I have errors. But by looking to the flow, you don't realize where the flow is because it's hidden, basically. So by clicking on the flow check, it highlights all your flows. And the good part is that if you click on one of them, it will automatically redirect to the actions that is failing and where is failing. Well, this was a basic one, but you may have a lot of them. Again, if you have complex flows, this is a time saver situation for you guys. And then we are reaching the end, but I couldn't leave without talking about sharing flows and the things that you need to be aware and the concerns about sharing your flow. So you have two options to share the flows. This is the first one, send a copy. This is the safe way to share a flow because you are basically create a template and share with your with your friend. So you are sending a copy, totally disconnect to your existing flow. It's just the template. He has, once he receives that, he has to insert the credentials of all the actions that you have there. So imagine that you are looking using Office 365 account. He has to provide his account. Dropbox, he has to provide his Dropbox account. So all my credentials, all my connections are safe. It are removed from that template, and you are sharing a template. Basically, the same of once you are creating a flow from this just create a flow, you have the options create based on a template. This is basically the same, okay? So again, it's quite easy. You go to your flows, three dots, send a copy, provide a description and an email address from your friend, and you send a copy to that friend. Important things to be aware is that the flow has to have a run successful history. So he has to have an history, he has to have one run, he has to run successful. And if the last run is failing, you cannot share because it will give you some error like last run was unsuccessful, or it can contain errors and so on and so forth. So I learned that because I was doing a flow and I was with a small issue, but I didn't have time on that particular hour to fix that. And I was trying to send a copy to one of my friends to fix that for me or to find a solution and retrieve that to me, and I couldn't. So I have to go to the flow, delete that action, run successful, put the action again, and send a copy. This way I overpass this limitation. But again, you can say share. It's the safe way to share a flow. The other is using users and security group. You are not really sharing a flow. You are doing some teamwork. You know, both of you are able to change that flow and do some teamwork. Be aware of the connections and the data leak. If I'm building a flow and say that I'm using, for example, my account, personal account, sandro.pereira.devscope.net, to send an email. If I'm sharing with, for example, this case, Catarina Rica, that means that Catarina Rica has access to my email account now, okay? She can create an action to read my emails. She can create an action to send an email to my boss in my name without any problem, okay? So it doesn't know my credentials. She doesn't know my password, but she has access to my connectors, so she can create other actions on that flow. So be aware of that. try to avoid using personal accounts on share flows or enterprise flows or generic flows. Okay. Another example, for example, is flow buttons. If you have a flow button and you want to share for other, not share, but other users can use that flow button, this kind of flows has a good option for you that you, for example, can configure run only users. And that means is, for example, if I'm sharing that email with that flow with Pedro Almeida, it means that if Pedro wants to use that flow button, he has to provide his credentials. So in this case, I'm using Office 365 inside. He has to put his credentials to the Office 365 account, and he can use it. So if you send an email using that flow button, he's using with his email, not mine. Okay, so be aware and do not share or do not use personal accounts in your flows with other team, otherwise they will have access. So for that is all I'm open, still have on the limit time. If you have any questions, it's now you have the opportunity to do that. And again, please fill the survey and you are able to win some swags.
First of all, thank you very much, Sandro. It was a very, very good presentation. I really enjoyed watching it. It was really very awesome.
Thank you.
And I learned a lot.
I'm glad. So this is a basic stuff, but important stuff.
It's really important because otherwise, and I think these are very important steps to implement right at the beginning, because on the other hand, you just have a big bunch of something.
Exactly. Especially the name of conventions is quite important.
As you said, it's always the same. It doesn't matter if it is Microsoft Automation, Microsoft Power Automate, or if it is, for example, Azure or something like this.
Yeah. The only situation I see here is because this Power Platform is so easy to build and is developers, ITs, and business users, and it tends to have more mistakes.
Exactly, and on the other hand, I think if you have the usual business user, I think is not aware of things like naming conventions or that there exists something like that.
Yeah,
and so it's very, very important. Yeah.